cool thing about this game is that Thomas Rawls went off. 23 carries, 169 yards, a touchdown.
Yeah.
He had a 69-yard run, an average of 7.3. Now, Marshawn Lynch looks like he'll be back. And as great as Thomas Rawls did, I don't think there's any substitute for what Marshawn Lynch brings to the backfield.
Right. No substitute. But we saw last week when a guy's got to carry the mail, you got to carry the mail, and Thomas Rawls has that ability.
Yeah.
So, it will be interesting to see what Marshawn Lynch does bring to this game on Sunday in terms of, are you beast mode? Are you not beast mode? Do we need to wait for beast mode a few more weeks? We don't see beast mode at the after the bye or whatever.
A smidgen of beast mode?
But the bottom line is 169 yards. 169 yards.
Right.
Great game by a rookie carrying the mail for Marshawn Lynch, and let's hope that if and when Marshawn Lynch can't go this again this season, that Thomas Rawls can continue to do it.
Well, the great thing about Thomas Rawls is he did what Turbin and Kristen Michael don't do.
Well, that's the point,
broke
Captain.
Tackles.
Thank you.
He's a tackle breaker.
Right.
Not afraid to mix
Love
it up.
it. Love that. I mean, that's to me, holding on to the football, not fumbling is number one for me as a running back, and being able to break tackles is number two. Because you get that hole, then it's on you. And Sweetness used to say, let the first guy through. I'll take care of him. You get the second guy. So once I beat my first guy, the second guy's taken care of, and I got open field ahead of me. It takes a certain mentality to be a tackle breaker. And I know that you love Sean Alexander, and he did wonders for this team, but he didn't break tackles either. It's very rare that we've seen a running back in this offense outside of beast mode that broke tackles. So it's refreshing. It's great to see. Doug Baldwin had a pretty good game, by the way. He only had 3 targets, but he had 3 catches for 89 yards.
Right.
Tyler Lockett was targeted the most out of the wide receivers at 5 targets. So I love how they're getting him in the mix. Jimmy Graham, I think, also had 5 targets, 3 grabs in that mix. It's a work in progress, I feel. So I'm with you, Commando. I'm not extremely worried, but I would love to see some heat, some edge, some hunger back in these guys. All right.
And for the record, Captain, I don't love Sean Alexander. I respect an NFL MVP that played for the Seattle Seahawks that never deserved to get booed in Seahawks Stadium.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
Punks.
Before we get on to Carolina coming in undefeated, Carolina doesn't have a very good track record at CenturyLink Field, which is awesome. But they're riding high. But I don't read much into that. I'll explain why. But last night at about 7:30, Derek Coleman was arrested on felony hit-and-run charges.
Yep.
He apparently around 7 o'clock p.m. ran into the back of another car, and that person driving broke their collarbone, etc., which could have come from the seatbelt or whatever. Some speculation is he might have fallen asleep. He might have left the scene because he got hit in the head and his hearing aid fell out and he was disoriented. He didn't post bail because a judge wasn't available to arraign him. I presume he's out of jail now after seeing a judge, but's been suspended indefinitely. The I formation has been great for the Hawks, and he's been doing a hell of a job, as always, as the lead blocker. Will Tukuafu will come in. First of all, let's get it on a personal level, what you feel personally about the situation as you're on social media, hearing people talk about it and what they think. What are your thoughts, Steve?
What I know of Derek Coleman is that he has been an upstanding citizen since he was a kid. Comes from a pretty good family. Rick Neuheisel, who recruited him at UCLA, speaks nothing but volumes about just his character. Never been in trouble, has never been late for practice, never been late for a meeting. He seems to me to be one of those guys who truly cherishes the fact that he is where he is, and I don't think he's the type of dude that's just going to take that for granted and just go out and just run amok and just act a fool. So I'm not going to be all Mr. 12s and Mr. 12th man and say, wait till all the information comes out, but I would tend to believe that if it was more or less that a home dude fell asleep behind the wheel, that's understandable. He's an NFL player, practice, going through the rigors of it. Maybe he was just tired, maybe dozed off, fell asleep behind the wheel and hit somebody, earpiece popped out, boom, disoriented, concussion, and he probably didn't know where he was. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't add anything more to that other than I completely agree. When I saw the pictures of the wreck, I was, blown away. And then the only thing I could think of, without hearing anything else, was, man, a guy must have just, because I've been in car wrecks, a couple of car wrecks before, and it just throws you for a loop, that impact. And everything you just said is, I think, how it played out. I just can't see a responsible person like that, any responsible person just walking away from the scene
Yeah.
unless there's extenuating circumstances of that. I'm just not altogether at this particular time.
And it's interesting because they did a field sobriety test and they did a blood draw. Now, to want to do a blood draw after a field sobriety test, there must have been things in the testing that made the officer think, well, he could be on the edge, and maybe that is his disorientation. You know, when your ears are covered up, like by a headgear for wrestling or whatever, and it's echo. Sound is different, and it can throw you off. And for a deaf person, I mean, I'm not deaf, so I don't know for sure, but I can only imagine that there's a good chance that being in an accident and being deaf and hitting your head, that could throw you for a loop.
And that was the part I didn't know about him, about the deafness. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
And he passed, all those tests.
Right.
Suspended indefinitely. I think that's a good move by the team in today's day and age of NFL. Hey, we better be safe than sorry. It's not the Ray Rice where, you're suspended for a little bit, come on back. Oops, we screwed up. Now you're suspended indefinitely.
Right.
I don't know.
But, to that same point, when Marshawn Lynch had that false report about assault or whatever the case might be, if you remember, the Seattle Seahawks did their own investigation, and Pete Carroll goes, look, as far as we're concerned,
It's bogus.
it's over, and here's how we're moving on. So,
But the difference is that Marshawn wasn't arrested on a felony charge. He wasn't put in
you
jail.
got me there.
And I think that's why the team said, okay, maybe being arrested on a felony charge is automatic indefinite suspension. They can bring it back 2-3 hours later if they want.
I see.
So they have that flexibility.
Right.
So that means that Will Tukuafu, the big boy, the guy that plays defensive line and fullback, will get a chance. I don't think they're going to miss a beat because he can handle himself blocking and he knows the offense, and I think he's been a good addition. So as far as players that you could be losing as Carolina comes to town, I don't think this is a huge.
Right.
I don't think it's a huge deal for the Hawks.
No, I agree. And you're talking about players that you're losing. Well, hopefully one of the players that's already come back is going to come back in this game. And that player is my favorite player, number 31, who seemed like he was nowhere on the field last week. And so I'm looking forward for him coming back, quite frankly, and being out there.
Here's the interesting, you bring up a great topic. So Cam Chancellor, which led the team in tackles. He had 11 total tackles. 8 of those were solo tackles. But at the same time, there were 3 times where he was out of position and the tight end just abused him because he didn't know what was going on with the defense. And he'd have to come over and look at the iPad.
Right.
That's because he missed so much time.
That's
So it hurt his team from that standpoint, but I don't think you're going to see Cam go through that situation again.
I hope not. And I'm hoping that their defensive coordinator starts having him just pop the crap out of the tight end as he's coming off the line, because the first 2 touchdowns that the Bengals scored were to Tyler Eifert, gave 85, that went right by Cam Chancellor, and he passed Cam at the 5-yard mark where Cam could have just give him a little bit of hit, slow him down. Number one, that's your man, so why don't you just cover him?
Right.
And so, yeah, you make a great point. Just now we're seeing the up and down of Cam Chancellor not being out there for the beginning of the season.
Does anybody think that Chris Richard is the new defensive coordinator without having the advantage of having a very experienced linebacker coach and Ken Norton Jr. on his side? Is he maybe feeling the early effects of being over his head just a touch to get the feel for what it is to be a D coordinator during the game?
I would probably think so. You're in a situation where, just as you said, the great thing about Dan Quinn is you had Ken Norton in your back pocket. You did have Christian.
Dan Quinn had been a defensive coordinator at Florida,
right.
So he knew what it was to run a defense during game day. He was a defensive line coach for the Hawks before he went to Florida. Came back, had that experience. Chris Richard just doesn't have. He's getting the experience now, but didn't have it before.
And on top of it, you had a boatload of talent on the field as well too. So it made it a little bit easier for Dan Quinn, to handle the rigors of in-game, switching things up on the fly. And Chris Richard, to his credit, I still think he's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah,
I mean, the
right.
defense up to this point has been, except for that fourth quarter in Cincinnati, has been playing pretty well at an extremely high level. So, yeah, I think your question is very valid. I think the answer is yes, but at the same time, I think he's still handling it quite well.
And I think of that because of the point that you brought up. You know, why aren't they jamming that guy, or why isn't Cam in those positions? And I think Cam's got to take some responsibility, but it comes back to the D coordinator. He's the one that's setting the tone for what goes on in the field.
And, you know, you're making an excellent point there. Earlier we talked about the changes and the ebb and the flows of where this team was, you know, before winning the Super Bowl. Then you win the Super Bowl, then you go back to the Super Bowl, and we know how that affects players, but we also forget how it also affects the behind the scenes of the coaching staff.
Right.
So, you know, guys leaving and in and out, and I mean, so there's a lot of, you know, moving pieces that still we're looking at coming together for the Seattle Seahawks. And a big part of that is, as you just talked about, man, the coaches who are now in the forefront, whereas they weren't before.
You know, Mike Holmgren told me this great story about Bill Parcells sitting down with him after Mike won that Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers, just saying, you know, everything's going to change for you now, and it's going to be even harder to get back, and here's why. And one of the primary reasons was players want to get paid. Players are going to go seek better deals and leave as free agents. Coaches are going to get opportunities, and you're going to have to try to create that chemistry that you got, that got you to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And it's very difficult to do, on top of the fact that everybody's gunning for you. Well, the Seahawks aren't getting gunned for like they were last year because they're not the defending champs, but they're still a star on the schedule for these teams. Hey, this is a damn good team.
That
This
was
is
a
a team
big
that's
win
gone
for
to
the Bengals last week.
It was a huge win.
I mean, if you
It-
weren't a fan of either, you know,
Yeah.
if you're not a Seahawks fan or you're just an NFL fan, you're looking,
Right,
that's a great game.
This was Washington State at Oregon. I mean, this was a game that you had. I mean, I know it's, but it is. I mean, this is everybody wants to take your best shot because you're the big boys, man. That's what it is. And regardless of the outcome, I mean, you're never going to replicate. That's the one thing that we see that at the high school level, we see at the college level. You're never going to replicate the successes you had before. It's always forging ahead and trying to create a new identity. Now, granted, your philosophy can stay the same. Your core principles.